I was asked by my sister-in-law to make her daughter's birthday cake, and this is actually a technique that I have been dying to try, so I'm really excited that she asked me. This cake is one that I've done a number of times in the past. I've actually made this cake for Aubrey's birthday, and recently when I made some vanilla cupcakes with lemon filling and lemon buttercream frosting. So I will make sure to include the recipe for this cake at the end of this video in case you want to screenshot it. But one of the kind of important techniques that takes place when making this cake is separating the eggs and whipping them so that we incorporate a lot of air, whipping up the egg whites, I mean. Then we set that aside and sift all of our dry ingredients and whip up the eggs and the egg yolks, and then, kind of mix everything together and fold in the egg whites later on for a nice fluffy batter. I should also mention that one of the reasons I'm making so many, that we have like a dozen eggs here, is I was making a quadruple batch. At the time I was making the cake for this rainbow cake, I was also making cupcakes for my lemon cupcakes, so that is why I have so much here. I was using it for kind of two purposes or two separate videos, so don't worry, you do not need all of these ingredients if you are just planning on doing one batch. It is much less, and you probably can use your stand mixer if you have one. It's also worth mentioning that at this point, once we mix in the milk, it begins to look a little curdly and a little worrisome. Every time I make this, I'm like, oh, this doesn't look that great. But once you fold in and mix in the dry ingredients, it really does resemble a nice cake-like batter. So move past your anxiety and mix in that flour mixture and all will be Once the batter was made, I went ahead and prepared the pans. I buttered 3 of my little round pans here, put some flour on there. I had already buttered the other ones, that's why I'm pouring the flour in. And then I also cut out parchment paper that would fit the bottom of the round pans. Now I only had 3 pans, so I had to do this step again later on. Then in 6 little bowls, I measured out exactly 400 grams of my batter. Like I said, I had a quadruple batch here and I was saving some for cupcakes, so I just wanted to make sure that each layer of the cake would have the same amount. Then I used this gel food coloring from Michael's. I picked it up from Michael's, and I'm really happy with the color choices. They had a lot of really pretty colors, but I only really needed 6, enough for every color of the rainbow, and I poured the batter in the pans and then baked it. The thing I like about this cake recipe is the cakes cool down nice and flat, so you really don't have to do much trimming after the cakes are cooled. Then I made a simple syrup to keep the cakes really moist. I was making each layer a number of days before the cake needed to be assembled, so the simple syrup of equal parts sugar and water really helped keep the cakes very moist, even once I froze them. So because of this technique or the style, I needed to cut out a circle from the center of each cake layer, and I figured I'd take care of this step before freezing it so that it would just make my life a lot easier later on. So I just used some circular device in my house, or in my kitchen, and cut out a little hole, wrapped them up in saran wrap, and threw them in the freezer. The day of the assembly, I cut up as many strawberries as we had on hand, put them in a container, and sprinkled some sugar on top. This, letting them sit in the sugar, creates a nice yummy syrup as well. And then I also made the frosting the day of the assembly too, just because I'm not 100% sure how to store frosting and to defrost it or get it back to room temperature, and I'd rather just work with it fresh. But hopefully I'll learn in the future because that would make life a whole lot easier. To be honest, I wish I would have made a little bit more frosting than this. I think I made about like 2.5 batches worth, and it came out, perfect for what I ended up making, but I just would have liked to have a little bit more on hand just to be on the safer side. You never want to have too little frosting. I used an entire bag of powdered sugar, whipped that up. You really want to make sure to beat your butter and then your butter sugar mixture for many minutes in between add-ins just to get it as fluffy as possible. And then we go ahead and add in our vanilla. One trick that I've seen in the past to make your buttercream more white is to add a very little bit of purple food coloring to the buttercream. I probably could have added a little bit more to give this an even whiter look, but to be honest, I was a little afraid it would come out too purple, so I didn't really want to risk it. Plus, I think it ended up working out fine in the end. So I brought my frozen cakes, my frosting, and my filling over to my sister-in-law's house and did the assembly there just so that I wouldn't have to worry about the cake in the car. Also, she had the sprinkles that she wanted in the cake, and so I really couldn't assemble it anyways at my house, so it all worked out. The first thing I did was put a little bit of frosting on the cake stand so that my cake would kind of hold its place. And then I put the purple layer down because I wanted the rainbow to go from red to purple starting at the top. I did a little layer of frosting, and then I did a little rim around each circle, the outer circle and inner circle, to kind of serve as a barrier for my filling. Now I only had enough filling for 2 layers, so looking back, I probably should have done the filling on the second layer and then the 4th layer just for a more symmetrical look, but again, it ended up working out. And then we just kind of repeat the process by adding the right color and the frosting. And then as you can see here, I'm putting the filling on the orange layer in between the orange and the red to keep it symmetrical, but like I said, I wished I would have done it between the blue and green and yellow and orange. Before we add on our top layer, we go ahead and dump in these sprinkles, which I believe my sister-in-law got from Michael's as well. She picked up 2 bags, which was perfect for this cake. And then I gave the cake a crumb coat. This is just to get the cake in a nice, good-looking shape, and we threw it in the freezer for a good maybe 10 minutes to really firm up. Then I used the rest of the frosting to coat this cake, and like I said, I wish I would have had a little bit more. We could still see some of the cake layers showing through, so to finish decorating this cake off, I decided to coat the entire thing in sprinkles. But before I did, I decided to just smooth out the sides as best as I can and really kind of make sure that the shape of the cake was something that everyone would enjoy. Then I just dumped on a bunch of sprinkles on the top and tried to protect the surface for like easy cleanup because I knew the sprinkles were going to get everywhere. And with my hand, I just kind of gently pressed the sprinkles in to the frosting, which was still kind of moldable. It wasn't totally firm. And the sprinkles really held their place. And like I said, we had just enough to really coat the entire cake. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. Juan thinks it is one of like his favorite cakes that I've made, just kind of in looks, and he even had some. He usually doesn't eat my sweets, so I was really impressed with that. We threw this cake in the freezer overnight, and then the next day was the little party. My sister-in-law added her little decorations to the cake, and she really liked it. My niece really liked it, and overall, I think it was just a really good experience. So then it was time to cut into the cake, and we kind of realized that we need to cut out a little bit bigger of a slice than maybe you're expecting to for the full effect. So you're going to see the slice get pulled out, we see the pretty rainbow, but for the full effect we need it to be a little bit wider at first. And when you remove that slice, all of the sprinkles come spilling out, and it's just really fun, and the kids really loved it. I really like how this cake turned out. I really love the rainbow colors. I thought that the food coloring was great. And I am just so excited that I was given this opportunity to make a cake that has been on my to-do list for such a long time.